All right, hi guys. We are back with another exciting week of physics, and this week we're going to be focusing on something called resonance, which is an interesting application of a wave phenomenon. I want to do things a little bit differently starting this week, which is to give you a little bit more background about what we're investigating, um, by giving you an explanation and reviewing some of the concepts that you are going to need to understand to take this the next step to understand resonance. So, resonance is actually an idea you might already be familiar with. It refers to the frequency that things vibrate at. For example, a child on a swing has a natural frequency of back and forth, which depends on the length of the swing and the mass of the child who's swinging back and forth, kind of like a pendulum. A guitar string also has a specific natural frequency, which results in a specific sound or pitch of a sound that you hear when you pluck the string. A couple of other interesting examples.
Jamie Vendera is famous for using the sound of his voice to destroy wine glasses. They seem to simply explode. But what's happening? I know the sound waves broke the glass, but I couldn't see how.
Well, I will post a link to this video so you can get a more complete explanation of how the sound wave is breaking the glass. But again, this is related to this concept of resonant frequency. And another classic example that you might be familiar with is this bridge in Washington State, which shortly after it was built, on a very windy day, it started to set up this vibration at the resonant frequency of the bridge. This is a classic example of resonant frequency and how it causes something to vibrate at greater and greater amplitude. Eventually, in this circumstance, the bridge vibrated so much that it couldn't withstand the forces anymore, and it just completely fell apart. I'll also post a link to that video so you can watch the whole thing. But to back up a little bit, to understand resonant frequency and how important it is, you first need to understand what's happening with the standing wave. So, a standing wave is what's produced when a traveling wave moves along a boundary. Say this might be a string, for example, and it hits a boundary and then it reflects back in the opposite direction. So, you have two waves moving in opposite directions and overlapping with each other or interfering as they move past each other. So this is a fixed boundary, which means when the reflected wave bounces back, it's going to be inverted, or you might think of it as upside down compared to the incoming wave. So now you have a red wave moving to the right and a blue wave moving to the left. And as those waves pass through each other, they actually overlap and what we call interference. So when the two waves combine, they either add or subtract, depending on where they are relative to each other. But the result is this pattern of wave interference that if you remove the individual waves, which again are moving past each other at all times, the result is this thing called a standing wave. And it's called a standing wave because it looks like it's standing still. It looks like it's just bouncing up and down, kind of like a jump rope in one position. And you'll notice that along this axis, there are points labeled with the letter N, which stands for a node or no displacement. Those are points on the wave that aren't moving at all. And in between each node is something called an antinode, which is a location of maximum displacement. So nodes and antinodes are part of a standing wave, and a standing wave is produced by two waves that are reflected off a boundary and moving past each other at exactly the right wavelength and frequency. So that important idea about resonance being set up by specific wavelength and frequency is what you're going to explore a little bit more this week. But just to review, a standing wave is produced by two waves that are moving past each other. It produces zones of no displacement called nodes and zones of maximum displacement called antinodes. And we're going to explore a little bit more about what exactly is required to produce this. So next week we'll apply this understanding of resonance frequencies to sound. So we'll start explaining what a sound wave is, how it's similar and different from some of the other waves that we've been exploring, and what resonance has to do with the sound wave that's being produced. So the last thing I want to leave you with is a visualization of guitar strings that are vibrating at their resonant frequencies. So in this clip, you're looking from inside a guitar out as the music plays. All right, and I will see you guys at our hangout. Have a great week.